Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So today what I want to talk about is your ego involved in your writing process, because it's involved in a couple different ways, and I want to break down how you can recognize it and how you can handle it so that you can actually improve your writing process and finish your drafts a lot faster. So first, there is the ego on the creation side, right? So when you're in the outline phase, when you're in the first draft phase, that is the creation side. You are putting out ideas, you are getting it out, you're not editing, or you shouldn't be editing, but what happens is your ego is constantly worried about the quality of your work, right? And so what happens is you're writing a scene and you stop, you get frozen, or you have writer's block, you haven't written in weeks, and that's because you are worried about it being bad. And your ego is essentially latching onto your creativity and making it so that you can't get anything done, because you're not able to silence your ego and just get it out. And so a lot of this comes from this ego idea that your story needs to be perfect immediately, right? All these writers are trying to write the perfect first draft. And you really have to reframe what you're doing entirely when you're coming into that first draft. It's not about writing a perfect draft. Writing a first draft is kind of like writing an outline. It is a sort of look at the ideas that you have and you're trying to figure it out. And ideally some of those ideas stay, but a lot of them are going to have to be switched and you're going to have to do rewrites and that sort of thing. But you get into this situation where you are just stopping yourself from writing and you're over analyzing. So every little piece you're trying to get through, you're over analyzing. And you're also trying to always look at the future in the sense of saying, okay, if I fix this now, I don't have to rewrite later. And you're trying to fix every single possible thing and write this scene by scene outline and try to write this perfect first draft so that you don't have to do rewrites. And that, especially if you're starting out, and especially if this is your first screenplay ever, that just isn't the case. And you don't even know anything about your writing process at this point. You don't really know how you like to write, and you don't really understand how to integrate some of the story theory into your actual writing because you haven't actually gone through the process of writing. And another thing I see that I've done a lot and that other writers do is that they worry immediately, even in a first draft, about what other people are going to think about this script. And they write a scene and they're like, this scene is so bad, I can't believe, if this person read it, I would be so embarrassed. And it's like, hey, it's yours until you show it to someone else. It's just yours, right? And you have to sort of build this space when you are in the creative zone, when you're in that outline, when you're in that first draft, of just being able to play around, right? Just write it. It's not going to be perfect. Play around, get through it. There's going to be some annoying parts, some things that you didn't figure out in your outline that then become glaring problems in your first draft. It's going to frustrate you, but you have to allow yourself to just play there, because if you bring in the editing side, you bring in your critical ego every single time, that's how you take 2 years to write a script, because you're constantly worried about it being so perfect. On the other hand, there is ego in editing. So once you have that first draft down, then your ego is still involved, because as you're trying to rewrite, now we're getting into this problem again, where it makes it harder for you to find your problems because you get attached to pieces of your story because of how hard it was for you to figure it out, how long it took for you to write this first draft. Suddenly you don't want to fix anything. You don't want to actually do the work and change 70 pages of this story because you put so much effort and work into it up to this point. But you have to allow yourself the ability to rewrite. And if you really actually want to improve, if you really actually want to get better at this thing and you don't just want to write one screenplay and call it done, you have to remove your ego and say, look, this story needs a page 1 rewrite. I have to go right back to the beginning. This has too many problems. I have to start from page 1 once again. And I've seen a lot of people really have resistance to that, because what they want to do is write a first draft, go back through, fix a couple pieces of grammar, take out a scene or two, and then that's rewriting and they call it done. But in my experience so far, my rewrites are heavy, especially from the beginning. From a first draft, it's likely that I have to go back to page 1 and redo it. Or it's likely that I change 50 pages or half the story. Because if you actually see and can identify clear problems, then you're going to have to make those changes. And this is another reason that people get angry and defensive about feedback, is when they get feedback from somebody, whether that's a script reader or a script coach they're working with or a friend of theirs, and it's critical and they're like, this isn't working or this isn't working. Immediately they push back rather than taking the time to remove their ego and say, okay, is there validity in these criticisms? Are these actual valid criticisms, or does this person not understand the vision of my particular story? And a lot of times people just assume, oh, they don't get it, they don't understand what I'm trying to do, I know what I'm doing, and they don't think about the fact that they are 1 draft in or 2 drafts in and essentially have barely written. And so it takes time, right? It really does take that time. And if you can accept the fact that you're not perfect, you need to spend time in the creative phase just creating. And if you can accept again that you're not perfect and you need to fix things, now you can begin to remove your ego from the situation and actually get better. That ego is constantly fighting with you. It's constantly worried about what other people are going to think, or being perfect, being all these things. But you don't get anywhere with that. You have to allow yourself to breathe and move through the story and get it onto the page first before you can even rewrite, before you can do any of that. And so if you don't ever actually build a consistent writing process, all you're going to ever be doing is this floundering. This is how people end up taking 2 years to write a script or a year to write a script, or they just struggle through it. And a lot of what happens here too is that they don't have any idea what they're doing. They're so afraid, they want it to be perfect. They're holding so tight to this concept idea that they have that they are terrified of finishing their script. And you have to just take that off of you and say that, okay, this is a process. And if I'm committing to screenwriting, if I'm committing to storytelling, I'm committing to a multi-year process. And so getting to the end of 1 draft of 1 script, you don't have a writing process at this point. What is likely to have happened is you agonized this whole time. You had 4 outlines, you wrote 30 pages, stopped for 6 months, then came back to it and tried to finish it out. You have no process. You have no way to go back and look at your problems. And so this sort of scattered writing is going to really slow you down. And if you can't ever build a consistent writing process, you're not going to be able to integrate these elements of storytelling and story theory, like structure and philosophical conflict and characters, quickly. Because the more you do it, the more you integrate those pieces of knowledge into your beliefs, right? And that's the big separator, is you have all this head knowledge, but once you realize, oh, this is how this story works, I have to operate within these parameters, I have to use this sort of idea, it should flow in this way, suddenly you start to integrate these knowledge pieces as beliefs, and that allows you to finish your writing. So if you want to actually build a consistent writing process, if you're tired of taking a year or longer to finish a feature-length screenplay or finish 1 draft of a feature-length screenplay, then I have a video for you to watch that will give you the 3 things you need to help finish that first draft and build a consistent writing process. If that's something you're interested in, then click the top link in the description. I hope this video was helpful. Please give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.